uh, and the business initiatives are two sides of the same coin. Now, I don't know how valuable this coin is, but clearly it's a high denomination coin because there are so many eminent people sitting here in this room wasting so much of their energy and time and money to be wanting to learn a little bit about what this initiative is. Unfortunately, nothing that I'm going to tell you today is going to be news to you. You are all very well aware of what this initiative is. The trouble is, trying to understand that initiative is what got me bald. So don't be worried if you don't really catch on. It's nevertheless two sides of the coin. The business and the people. The people are the enablers to any business initiative that you may want to take. There is no question about it that the three pillars to any initiative are the people that you carry with you, the processes and how well they are defined, and the infrastructure that you have or a technology that you have. Let's focus a little bit about the people. Any program that you have of any magnitude is a change initiative or it's a change management initiative. Change management therefore becomes an extremely critical thing. You want to change whatever you want to change. You want to change a light bulb in your house? It's extremely difficult because it gives you the jitters. I'm saying, are this light switch is already off? Is it really fused? You know, what's the problem? Why did the bulb fuse in the first place? As change management. Well, it's hopefully a very easy change management, but it's change management nevertheless. And you want people to change the way they've lived their lives for years together? I don't think it is a very simple process at all. What do you need for us to do a change management process? Change management from a people point of view really means changing the mindset of three groups of people that we have in an organization. And that's where our biggest problems always are. You know, a lot of people talked about executive. Ramesh talked about executive. I think Mr. Sharma talked about executive presence and executive commitment. That I think is the biggest thing. If the executive in the organization is committed to this change, management of change becomes so much easier. Then there is this thing about leadership commitment. And I'm talking a little differently between leadership and executive. Because leadership are the people who actually run the organization. The executive are the people who sit on the board. And the big problem is in the staff buy-in. Whenever you are intending to make a major change, the staff always assume it to be negative. A change in an organization is always looked upon as if it's detrimental to the interest of the people. And there, I think, is the biggest roadblock. How to make the people in the organization believe that changes in the organization need not be detrimental to the interests of the people. Yes, there are places and times where there may be some issues around rebadging or redeployment, etc. We'll just talk about that also in a minute. But basically, it's about the four areas or groups of people, groups of people perspectives or people principles that we're going to be talking about in a while. We're going to talk about how and what kind of people do you think you should be hiring? What should be the competencies of those people? What should be the traits of those people? Are the same guys who have been running businesses for years together good enough for them to run businesses in the new look office? The new look office might have a different perspective, and therefore you have to measure that. You have to also ensure that your resources are in order. Let me put up my specs because I can't read what I've written myself. Are your resources in order? Are the places where you're getting your people from? And are you deploying the resources the way they should be deployed? The third aspect that one needs to take care of is the culture of the organization. Is the organization likely to remain the same as it was, or is this movement likely to change the culture of the organization? And fourth, how are you going to upskill your people and change their development, change their capability development outlook? What programs are you going to put into place so as to upskill the people or change skill the people, if I may use that term? 5 more minutes?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. So let's take the first one, which is the key competencies. Now, we've done a lot of work around key competencies, and as a part of the publication that you will just go through also, you will see that we have narrowed down the competencies required for us to get an active participation from the people into 6 buckets. And we call these 6 buckets the key competencies. Let me just run through the competencies for you for a minute. Personal excellence, so demonstrating personal excellence, driving extraordinary performance, coaching and developing, accepting and enabling change, better relationships, and enhancing business acumen. None of them are new. Let me just go through them once again. Personal excellence, in fact, is the biggest driver that one can think of from a leadership competency point of view. If the leader themselves are quite aware of how the business is operating and how the business works, that gives a lot of confidence to the people. On top of that, the issue that you have to really talk about is whether that individual who is the leader of the group is committed to being the excellent and the best that he is in whatever that person is doing. So the person has to have a self-confidence that the activities that he is indulging into are the ones which he can do to the best of his ability, and also have a sense of continuous improvement. Is today better off than what it was yesterday? Am I going to deliver more than what I did tomorrow? So that itself, obviously is the personal excellence point, which is the real big confidence builder. Are you able to drive performance amongst the teams? Able to pass on the same sense of being able to create an environment of delivery within the teams. So that is about extraordinary performance and driving it. The third is about coaching and developing leaders, making clones of yourselves, or developing people who are likely to, further influence others. So leaders' biggest jobs is what is the situation going to be if I was not there in that place. So am I able to create more and more leaders and more competencies within the organization? Accepting and enabling change. So 2 terms here, accepting it and enabling it. Maybe we should flip it. First you should be enabling it, and then you should be accepting it. Well, then it will be obvious. So the change is inevitable, is a realization that is very rare. Most people talk about change, a whole lot of them scream about change, possibly I do too. But the fact is, whether people have the ability to know that change is inevitable, it will happen in the modern scenario, no 2 days are the same, and can you live it, is one big belief that has to be ingrained in a leader. Building relationships, I think this is also extremely key, because it's a question of collaboration, and there is no question of competition anymore. We feel that collaboration is the only way to go. There is a lot to be gained by collaboration, and there are enough and more statistics around how collaboration benefits much more than competition. And the leader's quality of being able to collaborate with people, including peers, including internal customers, or any other group that we are talking about, is a very important feature for leadership competencies. And finally, enhancing business acumen, which I already talked about while talking about excellence, and that is what the set makes. Now, one other factor that is important is that these need not be discrete practices or competencies. These are a group of competencies that we need to cull out from people and look at and actually help create and help reward. Since this is really a presentation of competencies, I'm not going to spend too much of time in other groups or in other parameters, but I will talk about them generically. Resources. For example, do we have a program where we have this resource requirement ingrained into the recruitment program, into the career building program? That means you are promoting the right competencies, you're rewarding the right competencies, and more importantly, do we have a training program which can support that? And finally, if there is a need for us to look at rebadging, which is an absolute reality today. In case we are looking at setting up shared service centers, one of the very big problems that some people should be really aware about is those shared service centers can actually sometimes in their life cycle, be outsourced to a third party. And the minute you outsource a shared service center to a third party, you have this huge problem about rebadging. And for some reason, which may be genuinely true, rebadging always means it has to be detrimental to my interest. And if it is detrimental to my interest, I have to scream and shout and protest about it. So that watching out for it is an extremely important aspect of handling resources. Changing the culture, again very important. The culture of a shared service center is very different for so many reasons that we just talked about. For instance, people are not going to have the same touch and feel, at least not in the initial days of the setting up of an independent center. The touch and feel of that center is going to be very different. For example, everything that you do has to follow a documented process. You just can't wing it anymore and just sort of get there has to be a sense of process improvement, and there has to be a reward built around control issues and enhancement. Important in all of this is the ability to manage a process through metrics. That is in fact the biggest problem. Right now, pretty much, pre-transition days, most people would be actually managing processes because of proximity to the process. Now the processes would likely to undergo a change if you are moving into a post BPM scenario where metrics is the only measure that you have for you to assess the health of your process. So that could be a very big cultural change between the people. And finally, do you have the infrastructure to train in all the parameters? One of the approaches that we follow and we'd like to talk about is the disseminated approach, where we actually say that the best learning is on-the-job learning, and the 10, 20, 30, 40, where we believe that classroom trainings, when you put everybody into a classroom, deliver a one-time lecture saying, here is what you got to do, here are the changes that you think are happening, and this is the new way to look at things, that retains only 10% of a person's learning. So if you actually put a holistic learning program, a classroom learning will teach you only 10%, even though you may be actually delivering the 100%. And the biggest learning is on the floor. If you put people on the floor, that's the acid test as well as the biggest learning on this. So I'll just go back, and the presentation really is over, but talk about the 4 pillars of the people management, or especially people change management program. I think as long as we take care of those 4 pillars, I think we are pretty much in place in figuring out how change management should be handled. I really don't know whether there is a formula where you can actually dissolve some few acids together in water and get the final solution. So we look forward to the questions after this. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Sanjay.